The entire world is pouring money into electric vehicles, and people keep telling each other that gasoline-powered cars are slowly dying because they are simply too dirty. Then suddenly, in the middle of all that noise, one CEO steps forward and makes a bold claim. Our new rotary engine will make the entire EV industry look like a child's toy. This is not some startup trying to grab headlines. It is not a company built on media hype. This is Mazda, a name tied to automotive history, legendary sports cars, and an engine many people believed had been buried for good. It sounds backwards, doesn't it? While Tesla is expanding its charging network around the world, while BYD is selling millions of electric vehicles every year, Mazda is turning the clock back, pulling out a technology from the 1960s and saying that this may actually be the real future. So what is inside this engine that has people talking again? What does Mazda see that the rest of the world may be missing? Or is this nothing more than an ambitious claim with no real foundation? Let's break down the entire story right now. Before we get into it, if you enjoy deep dive videos like this about technology, electric vehicles, and the battles shaping the future, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next. Electricity is not the only future for humanity. If you look at the global auto industry over the past 10 years, one trend seems so obvious that there's almost nothing left to argue about. Everything is moving toward electric vehicles. The European Union has approved plans to stop the sale of new gasoline-powered cars by the year 2035. California, the largest state in the United States, is pursuing a similar target. China is accelerating aggressively, launching hundreds of new EV models every year. And the sales numbers from Tesla, BYD, and dozens of other electric car brands are growing at a pace nobody can deny. From that point of view, the story looks finished. EVs win, gasoline cars lose, and it is only a matter of time. But reality is never as simple as it looks on a polished presentation slide. Look at what is happening in the real world, not in the glossy reports from automakers, but in the everyday lives of regular consumers. In the United States, millions of people still live in areas where the nearest electric vehicle charging station is dozens of miles away. In many states across the Midwest and the South, charging infrastructure is still thin enough that people are not worried about some distant future. They are worried about whether they can make it through their next weekend trip. And that is only one part of the problem. EV prices, while lower than they were a few years ago, are still often higher than comparable gasoline vehicles in the same segment. The cost of replacing a battery after 7 to 10 years of use is still a massive number that many buyers would rather not think about when they're signing the paperwork. And range anxiety, the polite phrase the EV industry uses for the fear of running out of power, has not disappeared from the minds of buyers. This is the gap Mazda is aiming at. It is not that the Japanese company does not understand that EVs are growing. They understand it very well. But they also see something that many people are trying to ignore. The transition to electric vehicles is happening unevenly, and huge gaps are still wide open. Mazda has decided to fill those gaps with the oldest weapon in its arsenal, upgraded to an entirely new level. But to understand why that matters, we need to get to the heart of the story. What exactly is a rotary engine? What has it accomplished? And why does it still have a place in the modern world? The rotary engine, a legend that never truly died. When people think about a car engine, most of them picture the same thing: cylinders, pistons moving up and down, and the familiar mechanical layout that has powered automobiles for more than a century. That is the traditional piston engine, and it is the foundation of almost every car you have ever seen on the road. But there is one type of engine that challenged that entire model, and the company that brought it into mass production, turning it into an automotive icon, was Mazda. The rotary engine, also known as the Wankel engine, named after German engineer Felix Wankel, who designed it in the late 1950s, works on a completely different principle. Instead of pistons moving up and down in a straight line, a triangular rotor spins continuously inside a specially shaped combustion chamber. The movement is smooth and circular. There are no constant interruptions, no repeated impacts like the ones inside a piston engine. And the result was a driving experience unlike anything else. Mazda began putting rotary engines into production cars in the late 1960s. Through the 1970s and 1980s, the company built some of the most unforgettable sports cars of the era, The RX-7, a name every car enthusiast from that generation knows, became one of the most beautiful and exciting sports cars ever made. It sat low to the ground. It was lightweight. Its weight distribution was almost perfectly balanced, and the rotary engine under the hood made a sound that nothing else in the world could truly copy. It was not loud and thunderous like an American V8. It was not deep and refined like a German inline six. It was something higher, sharper, and almost a little crazy, as if the car itself was screaming when you pressed the accelerator. The RX-7 was later followed by the RX-8, and among car enthusiasts, both models hold a place that cannot be erased. Even today, at car events in California, Texas, or Florida, when an RX-7 shows up, people still turn around and stare. So why did Mazda stop making them? The answer came down to three major weaknesses in older rotary engines. The first was fuel consumption. Rotary engines were famous for drinking gasoline. You could get incredible performance, but the price you paid at the fuel pump was significant. After the oil crisis of the 1970s, that became a serious problem. The second issue was durability. The sealing components inside a rotary engine, known as apex seals, wore out faster than comparable parts in a piston engine. That meant higher maintenance costs and a shorter engine lifespan if the car was not properly cared for. The third, and probably the deciding issue, was emissions. As environmental regulations became stricter around the world, rotary engines struggled to meet increasingly tough standards. They burned fuel differently from piston engines, and controlling emissions became harder. Mazda was forced to end production of the RX-8 inches the year 2012. At that point, many people believed it was the last time they would ever hear the word rotary in a serious automotive conversation. But they were wrong. It may sound simple, but this one detail could change the entire game. Mazda never truly gave up on the rotary engine. The company was simply waiting for the right time to bring it back with an entirely different job. The return in this time, everything is different. In the year 2023, Mazda introduced the MX-30R EV, a range-extended hybrid that uses a rotary engine not to directly drive the wheels, but to do something else: charge the battery. This is the key point that many people missed when they first heard the news. In this new setup, the rotary engine no longer has to carry the responsibility of directly producing the force that moves the car. That was the role that pushed it toward its old weaknesses in fuel consumption and emissions. Instead, it runs within a steady and efficient operating range, serving only as a generator. The battery powers the vehicle. When battery power gets low, the rotary engine starts up and recharges it while the car keeps moving. This system is called a range extender, and it directly addresses the biggest fear EV owners have: being stranded with a dead battery. But why use a rotary engine for this job instead of a small conventional piston engine? The answer comes down to the basic physical characteristics of the engine itself. A rotary engine is extremely compact, much smaller than a piston engine with similar output. In the tight packaging of a modern car, where space is already needed for batteries, electric motors, and electronic systems, that is incredibly valuable. You can fit a rotary engine into places where many other engine types simply would not fit. It is also lighter. And because it operates at a steady speed instead of constantly accelerating and slowing down like it would when directly powering the wheels, the old problems with fuel consumption and component wear can be reduced significantly. Mazda has also added high-efficiency fuel injection and advanced cooling systems to this new generation of rotary technology. The result is an engine that is still compact and lightweight, but far more efficient than what people remember from the 1980s. And here's the most interesting part, the part Mazda is betting on for the future. The new rotary engine is designed to run on biofuels and synthetic fuels, not just traditional gasoline. If alternative fuels continue to develop, Mazda's vehicle could become more environmentally friendly without requiring major changes to the hardware. That is a smart move. It means Mazda does not have to bet everything on one single energy source. It keeps flexibility in a world that is changing faster than anyone can predict. But no matter how promising a technology may be, it means nothing if it cannot survive the challenges of the real market. The challenges Mazda cannot ignore. Let's be honest, because this is the most important part if you truly want to understand this story instead of hearing only one side. Mazda is doing something interesting and ambitious. But it is also facing very real challenges, and any honest analysis has to acknowledge them. The first challenge is market scale. Mazda is not Toyota. It is not Volkswagen. In the global auto industry, Mazda is a mid-size brand with far fewer resources than the major giants. Developing and mass-producing a new generation of rotary hybrid systems requires huge investment. The question is whether Mazda has enough financial power to follow this strategy all the way through. Tesla spent years and tens of billions of dollars before becoming a profitable company. BYD benefits from China's enormous industrial ecosystem, but Mazda is taking a road that not many companies are willing to share, and it is doing so with a much smaller budget. The second challenge is consumer perception. For years, the auto industry, supported by media coverage and government policy, has built a very clear story. Electric vehicles are the future, and gasoline cars are the past. That message has sunk deep into the minds of buyers, especially in developed markets. Convincing people that an internal combustion engine, even a rotary one, can still be a good choice will not be easy, even if the technical argument makes sense. Marketing and psychology are very different battles from engineering. The third challenge is environmental regulation. This may be the most difficult challenge of all. Mazda has improved the emissions performance of its new rotary engine significantly, but at its core, it is still an internal combustion engine. And in Europe, California, and a growing number of other markets, bans are coming. By the year 2035, it may no longer be possible to sell new internal combustion vehicles in many of the world's largest markets. That means Mazda's window to build market share with rotary hybrid systems is not unlimited. The company is racing against the clock, and that clock is ticking. The fourth challenge is long-term reliability. The new rotary engine is designed to be far better than previous generations, but memories of RX-8 owners dealing with worn apex seals are still fresh in the minds of many car enthusiasts. It will take years of real-world use, not laboratory testing, to prove that this new generation of rotary technology can be trusted over the long term. And consumers in their mid-40s, 50s, and beyond, people who have watched enough automotive trends come and go, are not likely to gamble their savings on a technology that has not yet proven itself over time. And this is where the race becomes even more intense, because Mazda is not the only company trying to shape the future of the auto industry. The competitors it is facing are not small. How are the giants looking at Mazda? To understand the importance of Mazda's move, we need to put it into the bigger global competition picture. And once you do that, things become much more interesting. Tesla is not just an electric car company. Tesla is a technology company that has built an entire ecosystem, a widespread supercharger network, software that receives constant over-the-air updates, and one of the most loyal customer communities in the auto industry. What Mazda is really targeting is not Tesla's electric cars themselves. It is the charging anxiety of Tesla customers, and that is a real weakness for Tesla. Even though the supercharger network has grown massively, millions of Americans still live in places where charging an EV is a real inconvenience, not just a theoretical concern. If Mazda can offer a vehicle with what feels like unlimited real-world range, where you can refill almost anywhere and never worry about battery charge, while selling it for less than a comparable Tesla, that becomes a very specific and attractive offer for customers Tesla has not fully convinced. On the other side of the world, China's BYD is now one of the largest sellers of electric vehicles on the planet. Its biggest weapons are low prices and long driving range. That is exactly where Mazda says it wants to compete. If a Mazda rotary hybrid can offer 400 to 500 miles of real-world range without requiring special charging infrastructure and sell for the same price or less than a comparable BYD model, that could be a real threat to BYD in global markets. This is especially true in Southeast Asia, India, and Africa, where charging infrastructure is still weak. BYD understands that. It would not be surprising if, in the coming years, the company pushes even harder to lower prices and expand into new markets, trying to claim those customers before Mazda has the chance to reshape the game. But what about Toyota and Honda? This is a point many people overlook. Mazda's strategy actually fits Toyota's long-standing philosophy better than almost anything else. Toyota has argued for years that the auto industry should not put all of its money on battery electric vehicles. The company believes hybrids, hydrogen, and other technologies all have a role to play. That is why Toyota continues investing heavily in hybrid systems and hydrogen-powered vehicles, even while much of the world races toward battery electric cars. If Mazda proves that rotary hybrids are practical and welcomed by the market, Toyota could see that as additional evidence supporting its own argument. It may even look for ways to collaborate with Mazda or learn from the technology. Honda, with its strong engineering culture, is also a possible contender. If rotary hybrids succeed, Honda may seriously consider whether it can do something similar using its own technologies. European brands such as BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Audi are not sitting this one out either. These companies are among the biggest believers in fully electric vehicles, and they are under huge pressure to make that strategy work. But the reality in Europe is not always as clean as it looks in the plan. Charging infrastructure outside major cities is still limited in many areas, and premium customers expect absolute reliability, something current EVs do not always provide perfectly. If Mazda succeeds, it could force German brands to ask an uncomfortable question: are we ignoring an important market segment? And the answer may not be what they want to hear. So in the end, the biggest question remains, can this technology really change the future? And what would it actually mean for consumers? What would you, the car buyer, get from all of this? Let's pause for a moment and focus on what matters most. Not the corporate battle, not the complicated engineering, but the most practical question of all: if Mazda succeeds, what does that mean for you, the buyer? Especially if you are in your mid-40s, 50s, or older and you are looking at the car market with practical eyes. You are not chasing hype. You want to know which vehicle actually fits your life. First, price. Mazda says its rotary hybrid system could cost less to produce than a fully electric vehicle because it does not require a massive battery pack. In theory, that could mean lower vehicle prices for buyers. That is a very real advantage in the United States, where EV prices are still a major obstacle for many households. Next, convenience. This is where the rotary hybrid has its clearest strength. You can still pull into almost any gas station, fill up in 5 minutes, and keep driving. No searching for a charging station. No waiting 30 minutes to an hour. No worrying whether you will make it home tonight. For someone who drives long distances often or lives in suburban and rural areas with limited charging stations, that could make a real difference in everyday life. Then there is long-term ownership cost. There is no obvious scenario where you are suddenly facing a $10,000 battery replacement bill after 8 to 10 years. The maintenance costs of a rotary hybrid system are still unknown, but in theory, it does not carry the same massive financial burden that an expensive EV battery can create. Then there is the driving experience. This is where rotary engines can deliver something electric vehicles cannot fully replicate. EVs are quiet, smooth, and powerful, but for many drivers, they're missing something that true car people know how to describe. Soul. The sound of an engine building revs. The response when you shift gears. The feeling that there is a machine under the hood that is working, breathing, and alive. For people who grew up through the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, people who remember what it felt like to drive a real sports car, that is something you cannot buy with kilowatts or instant torque. Then there's the environment. This is where things become more complicated. Mazda has improved the emissions performance of the new rotary engine significantly, and its ability to use biofuels could help reduce its carbon footprint over time. But honestly, an electric vehicle charged with renewable energy will still be cleaner in terms of direct emissions. That is a trade-off every buyer has to decide for themselves based on their own priorities. What becomes more interesting is when you look at the full life cycle of a vehicle. Producing lithium-ion batteries requires significant resources and creates a substantial amount of carbon emissions. When you consider the entire process, from mining raw materials to manufacturing, driving, and end-of-life disposal, the difference between EVs and rotary hybrids may not be as simple or as clear as many people believe. And then there is the long-term future. This is where Mazda is making its biggest bet. If synthetic fuels, made using renewable electricity and carbon dioxide captured from the atmosphere, become widely available over the next decade, then a rotary engine running on synthetic fuel could become close to carbon neutral. Many engineers and scientists believe this is technically possible, but it will still take years before it becomes a commercial reality. This is also the biggest dividing line in the debate about the future. Which path do you believe in? Do you believe in fully electric vehicles with better batteries and wider charging networks every year? Or do you believe in a more diverse future where multiple fuels and technologies exist side by side? Mazda's betting on the second answer, and over the next few years, the market will tell us who was right. The story of Mazda's Rotary engine is not just the story of one engine type. It is the story of a smaller company with fewer resources choosing not to follow the crowd. Instead, Mazda is betting on what it believes is the crowd's real weakness. Will Mazda be right or wrong? The most honest answer is this: we do not know yet. Electric vehicles are growing quickly, and progress in batteries, charging infrastructure, and cost is moving faster than many people expected. But at the same time, real challenges involving rural infrastructure, battery costs, and driving experience have not disappeared. Mazda is fighting inside that gap, and that gap could become much larger or much smaller depending on what happens over the next 5 to 10 years. One thing is certain: the auto industry is about to become much more interesting. The race is no longer just Tesla versus BYD. There is another player entering with a completely different strategy, and the sound of a rotary engine making a comeback will not be easy to ignore. So what do you think? Does Mazda see a future that everyone else is overlooking? Or is this a gamble that simply cannot win? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this video helped you see the EV story from a different angle, hit like and subscribe, because there are plenty more stories like this waiting ahead.